The first question is, why did you choose green?
Why did I choose green? Well, I think green is the color of life, of regeneration, you know. So it's really about life. It brings life to and I've always liked green.
Anybody want to go deeper into that? How ever since you were a little kid, you'd like green?
Yes. I think it reflects a lot of the things that I enjoy in nature. I think in nature, I walk, and I like to walk. When I think about when I'm writing something or directing something, I like to write so that I can think. And nature is where I get inspired, and I do that often. So.
Okay, good.
I noticed that your line is pretty steady up until the end, and it has a triangle and like a little lump. Is there meaning for that, or was just unconsciously you just created a triangle?
You know, I was thinking about maybe suddenly a snake came into, because of the circle there, and then I encountered it with, it could be a dog or a cat of some sort, and they meet at that point. And it just came to me, and I decided to break the line, and that's why it came.
There were two things that impacted me and what my colleagues were doing. One was the spiral here. I'm sorry if I messed it up, but the spiral thing. So that kind of shape for me was like speaking to me. And then Jarinka chose two colors, and I said, "Oh yeah." Because the duality of who we are as a nation, as Puerto Ricans, we have two souls. We have one that speaks mainly in Spanish, or the one that speaks mainly in English. There's more Puerto Ricans outside of the island than there are in the island itself. So I said it cannot be just one color. It has to be two sides to what our soul is, our identity. And then I said, what more than the playful nature of yellow and red, which are the basic colors of one of our jokester characters, which is the Vejigante. And there's a song that says, Vejigante está pintado de amarillo y colorado, meaning Vejigante, which is the jokester, is painted in yellow and red. So I said, okay, they gotta be there. Also, this is the same color of our theater in New York, out in the Bronx. The walls where we have our exhibits in the lobby, it's yellow. So it made me think of home, of the Bronx, of the duality of who we are as Puerto Ricans, of a nation that has been, throughout history, the subject of many experiments, of many manipulations, both economically, socially, and politically. And so I felt like that was a representation of what we do in theater, which is to try to get a sense of what that soul is. And in the play that we're doing here now, El Apagón, the Blackout, it's precisely that. It's a character that is played by same character by two actors in two different moments in their life. One is a younger version of the same character, and they tell the same story from different points of view. And so I think it really embodies who we are as a people, that way that we tell stories.
That's what it is right now.
Yeah. Now this is, turn around. This is a particular strange move. This is the littlest piece on here, and you just grabbed a little bit and went on.
I was thinking at that moment is when you, because I was thinking of the sticks as obstacles.
Yeah.
Some you can jump over, some you have to go under.
This
That one
in
particularly,
between.
in between, it's like navigating a maze, some sort of maze, and I thought that sometimes you have a tendency, we all have a tendency, we go in and then we look for a path of least resistance, and so I stopped there, made a decision to turn, and then that's the reason I did that.
Okay. I like the idea of the path of least resistance. Does that have to do with your writing and theater at all, or organizing things?
Well, usually you start.
try.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. My best profile back. Sometimes writing is really about engaging with whatever material you do and feeling comfortable with it. And sometimes you have to really get complicated before you get simple.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I always discovered, that in the beginning, when you, you know, I call it vomiting the page, it just comes all and doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's too complicated, and then you start drawing and pulling away into the spine of what you really are trying to do. So that's the rationale behind it.
Last question, why a snake, the circles?
Oh, the circles were because you usually find yourselves in paths that are circular, and then you stop and then you go back. So it's not a complete circle where it stops. You go and you get to a point where you find that point that you say, okay, I got what I needed, and then you go back and get out of the circle.
My mother always had paint, and I don't have like a skill, but I've been around with colors and paintings all my life. So I don't draw or paint, but I have seen it.
You have a lot to say. I don't believe you have to have a certain skill to make meaningful art. That's the first thing. And that's what Voice to Vision is all about. It's the idea that if you're having fun and you can't get away from it, you have something to say. And if you have something to say and it's interesting, then it's art. It has nothing to do with skill. And so you fit into that category. You have something really interesting to say, and we'd like to hear about it a little bit. Okay? Like, why did you pick blue and then switch to pink?
I chose blue because we are doing the play El Apagón, and I moved to New York a year ago, and the sky is really different from Puerto Rico. In New York, I can see the sky because of the big buildings, and in El Apagón, there's a line that says, oh, the sky is beautiful, just like almost every night in Puerto Rico. And I felt that because in Puerto Rico, the sky feels so big and so amazing, and the stars, and it's like an open space. And in New York, it's like you can't see the sky because there's a lot going on down. So that's why I choose the blue, I think, because it reminds me of the play and my country and what I don't have right now.
Okay. Why the pink? Why just switch colors?
I don't know why I like pink, but I like it. I have my phone is pink, my computer is pink, everything is pink, and my childhood bedroom was pink, and I had another bedroom and I painted pink, and I don't know why, but I just have everything pink. I choose pink today, too.
Oh, that's good. This is where you started, right here. And this is where he ended. And you were talking about you wanted to leave it open, and you left it open for him to end it, which I think is interesting. So you ended it where she started, which makes it complete.
And what I was also thinking is that if Janika's was this path that was so beautifully guarded by that pink, but it takes you, see how clean that path is? It goes here, but it's always guarded by this pink that allows it to grow, allows it to be what it is, and then to become bigger, but then it's always guarded by that pink. That pink becomes like a warrior. And I said, well, then that's a pathway. So all these people here, all these languages, all these accents who are coming from somewhere are going to benefit from what she did. So they're coming in to follow that path, always guarded by the pink. So that's why I never touched the pink, because the pink was like a warrior for me. It was like the strength, like holding, it's like steel, kind of holding it together to get somewhere else that is not defined yet, you know.
So your blue is the nucleus of this painting. You didn't know that was happening, but you did. You were just having fun. But there's all kinds of meanings that years later, if you ever see the picture again, which you will, you say, I know what I was thinking when I did this. Because consciously you don't know why you do things, but you're making decisions. You made turns, you went over, you made lines thicker and to a mess. And there's a reason for that. And this is, it's not important that we come up with those reasons. What's important is your DNA is on here, your artistic DNA, and this becomes a life form, an expression of the three people who started it. And we already had some good stories that came out of it, wonderful stories. So these lines are a journey, and there's obstacles. I think that Al pointed out, called them obstacles, and that's what we set up. So you need to go over or under the obstacle. You can also bounce off an obstacle. So what, were you thinking this as a journey? It wasn't a river, was it?
I didn't thought about a river.
But, so now when you got to the corner, you bounced off the corner.
Yeah.
And so you bounced off the top. And then you all of a sudden came down and you made a mass of blue. And then did a mass. What was going through your mind when you were bouncing off the corners and ended in a mass?
I was thinking that I didn't want to finish. Yeah. So it was like if I stop here, then
Yeah.
that's my last thing I'm gonna do. So I just want to keep going till here. I got like a little bit tired and say, okay, let's open the space and leave it like when you're writing a play or when you're doing a play, almost everybody wants you to have like a conclusion, like an ending, and not necessarily you need an ending, because sometimes life goes on and you don't know what is the end of your play. So there's no end there. It's just, let's leave it to the imagination of the audience or your imagination.
Do you see the big blue mass as a kind of an ending?
It's not an ending.
What is that?
It's where that stopped. But
why did it spread out like that?
I don't know.
Instead of having a line, it became a blue shape. This is nice. So
I just think it's to be continued.
okay, you just wanted more space.
Yeah.
Do you think outlining it in pink means you took charge of this thing, that all of a sudden it's officially yours since it's outlined in pink?
I wanted to shape it because I didn't want like to look like a mess, but then I figured it out that the pencil, is that the pencil, right? No, the brush was so tiny that I couldn't shape it like I wanted, because I think that's the perfectionist in me trying to talk, but then I get desperate. So that's when I started doing that, because I wanted to shape it. I just think there's a lot of emotions of what's going on in my head, and I just went with the flow.
Okay.
It was really marvelous to watch.
Por ti daría la vida y yo sin ti ya no soy nada. Blanca nube que se extiende lentamente, despeja un cielo azul, cielo azul, cielo azul.
Then I said, while we do in theater, we try to take a picture of the soul, right? So what would be the not the fingerprint, but the soul print? So I said I have to have some sort of a finger printing component there, because that's what we do in theater. As artists, we go up there and we get a sense of the pulse of what our society and our environment is feeling. And then we ask questions to the audience, to society, based on that pulse that we see. We don't have answers, we basically just ask questions. And then I said, how do the colors talk to each other? And so I said some colors are going to stay on one side, mainly on the canvas, and then the yellow, all of a sudden, it's found a bridge. And you get to the other side because you couldn't cross.
Yeah.
So yellow found a bridge up here and went that way. And then when I got there, I said, where do I go now? Now I'm on the other side of the soul, on the other side of this country or this continent or whatever. So I said, just follow that bridge and take you out. And it took me to this world here. So the yellow continued, but I wanted to listen to what was being said here in the other colors. So I said, we're not going to disturb, let's be, well here the yellow is basically more on the canvas. Here it's more listening to what's out there, what's behind it. So you just stayed, except for here, because I know the way to go. And I get to stay more on this side. And then when I started with red, I said, well, red you belong here. And what I was trying to do was then do the opposite. Was the color would be the bridge in here, but then the red said, nah, I'm gonna be in the canvas also. So that's more or less what I was thinking. Also, yellow is representative of creativity in the Yoruba tradition, of Ochun, the goddess of love, the goddess of the river. So I said it's gotta be yellow in there, and yellow flows. Yellow is a river that bounces off. It just loves the swells and then just keeps on going. You can never stop a river. You can never tell a river where to go. River goes wherever it wants to go.
Angélica te llama porque tienes en tus ojos algo angelical. Dulceña primorosa, cual la musa que me inspira este dulce cantar. Castaña cabellera, dientes blancos como el niño.
Fits in with your theater people, you know, right there.
Yeah, I guess we do that, right?
I'm glad you, now the people in Voice Division, Jordan and Nora, did you ever dream that this piece that you created, I didn't make this structure, those two made it without me having any input. Because we wanted something, I wanted something that I didn't know anything about. Did you ever dream that this would become the bridge between two worlds? Like you
I
didn't-
mean, not necessarily two worlds, but definitely at least when I was structuring the pieces that I was putting on, I definitely saw it as kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge in California.
So he did see it as a bridge, wow. And did he use it as a bridge, so he picked up on it?
It's great, and I think what really attracted me about that also, it's our nation our nature as migrant people. We are constantly adapting to wherever we go, and that's what we do. We see what's there, what's the structure that's in place, and we just find a way in or out or have fun with it. And that's what this provided me, an opportunity to say, reflect on what migration is and on how you keep on that journey and how important it is that we, understand where accents come from, and that accents are not something to be completely erased, but on the contrary, we are a nation of accents, and we should take pride in that. We should take pride in all these things. So they're not necessarily boiling it down, but they're saying, look at all the textures that are happening in someone's soul, that you cannot just paint clearly. An accent or the history of someone is something that is so complicated. I know that with us, we're proud of our accents. And I've been in this country I was born in Puerto Rico, but I spent most of my life in the Bronx. And there's so many different accents in the Bronx, and people think of, what is it that makes you want to stay there and do art? And I go, well, because this is a society, a place that thrives on an interaction between an artist and the people that are around it. And so this, it was like an invitation to figure out how is it that we navigate those places in which we become who we are, right? And how to, it was a great metaphor of where there's a soul lies, so this is like the structure that holds it. The soul is still fluid and it's underneath it and around it, and it's flowing always,
I draw an eye
Oh,
or a couple eyes, and I figured out that this shape, if I look at like this, it looks like an eye. So I fill it with it, and I use it, that form of the face. And I wrote Ausencia there because it's a song that I have in repeat right now in this time of my life. And it's an Hector Lavoe song. He's a salsa singer. He was a salsa singer, and that's a bolero. So it's a song that I really... No, no importa tu ausencia, te sigo esperando. That one. Then I figured I wanted to draw more eyes because one wasn't enough. And then it looks like fishes. I don't know if that's the plural, but fishes. That's what I draw. Cane. That's
Fishing rod.
yeah.
fishing rod. I don't know. I just go with the flow again. I don't have any specific reason.
You've become a surrealist.
So I was still stuck with what we talked about before about what is the soul print? What is the legacy of a soul, right? And so I started like, what would be that fingerprint, but what would be the soul print? So I started like, okay, it's a journey that never ends. So I put my pencil down, and I just said, let's see where it goes. As the same way that you have the same, the DNA of a people, I guess. So I just said, okay, what would that be? Where would that journey take us? So I never stopped trying to figure out what would be that imprint. And then it just kept going and going and going. And I saw her drawing an eye, and I'm like, okay, there's gotta be some connection here. So this would be perhaps the DNA of the mouth of the speech. So this would be like then this would be what's coming out of this person, so this individual, I don't know, the story. So it goes on, and then it was fun, because then what was happening was that as I heard them talk, so a lot of what they were saying was making its way here, in terms of the river, in terms of the dead bodies, and I'm like, oh wow, this is, so it was beginning to catch some of the paint color. So if you see down here, like, you can trace a line, and it goes down. Here, it picked up yellow. So there's some yellow that was in the pencil. And I got really emotional down here, because I'm thinking, we never stop. We never stopped creating. And my pencil was running out. And the line was, and I'm like, no, this is a life that has to go on. You always find a way to be alive. So I'm like, no, you're not gonna give up, you're gonna give up. So it just kept on going, and the pencil kept on getting away. I'm like, no. So it's like how we, as a people, go forward and make meaning with whatever we have. So that pencil was just coming out, and then at the end it just disappeared. And then, so, with that imprint, the soul print, I don't know why. Now I'm gonna have to write poems about that stuff.
It's funny that he's talking about, he was watching me drawing, because after I finished, I sat, and then I was watching him doing his drawing, and it reminds me of the hurricane, because he has the spiral, and this is like kind of the wind in the hurricane, and then I saw my draw, and I was like, is that the eye of the hurricane?
Yeah.
Is there some connection there? And now that he says that there's some kind of, he was watching some kind of connection there, I saw some kind of connection too. So it's so funny that how we create individually, but at the end we create together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the spirit of Pregones too.
Mm-hmm.
We create collective.
And it's so interesting, because it's based on Al's spiral first, and it's a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've been defined by hurricanes lately. Our country has been ravaged, completely by the force of nature. So we can't get away from talking about nature nowadays with us. So it's there. It's always very present. I mean.
And about Al's drawing, I saw that he wrote Patria, Siempre Patria, and it reminds me of a conversation I was having like a year ago about how as immigrants and Puerto Ricans we create, and how New Yorkers or Puerto Ricans that were born in the US create. And sometimes we want to draw something about our country specifically because we really want to mark that territory. We are Puerto Ricans, and for me it's really interesting how he wrote Patria, because that's what it represents him, and how I'm gonna talk about myself, how I draw this, and I didn't have to say anything about Puerto Rico, because that is Puerto Rico too. Puerto Rico is me, and I am Puerto Rico, and it's a difference about how we see art as Puerto Rican, and I found that really, really beautiful and interesting, how we came from the same place, but we create different, because we remember the island or what Puerto Rico is differently.
Yeah, and you know, now looking back at this, I feel like why it happens is that I need to have every single part of it filled up, because that's what we do. I mean, we have been colonized so many different times, and just layer after layer. So there's not a blank slate anywhere in our. It's got to be. It's full. There's no white space and empty spaces. So I'm like, okay, we need to go back, and this has to be painted. You can see a little bit of that. It's got to be colored. It's like the hat that he was wearing. That's what being a colonized person is. And we're a colony of the United States, and there's layers upon layers upon layers. And sometimes it takes time for someone to understand where do I fit in there. So I'm like, okay. And also it's got to be playful, because we always make fun of every situation. Sense of humor for Puerto Ricans is. So I'm like, all right, this got to be filled with color. This has to be, except for the memories, I guess. Which are like up here and there. And then I said, okay, if there's a person or a people coming coming out of this, it cannot be. That's why I was turning the painting before. I was like, okay, what if it was the eye like this? I'm like, no, we can never be like, we're always like this. We're never just like this. There's always something that's putting us in a different position. So.
Now